Joe.
I have this up.
No Joe.
No, Joe has to be excused.
I now call the Norton City Regular Council meeting to order Monday, November 12th, 2018. Before we get started here this evening, we have some honored guests with us this evening. We have the Military Order of the Purple Hearts, Chapter 699. And a little bit later this evening, we will have Senator Frank LaRose with us as well. And at this time, I would ask everybody to stand for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent prayer. And I would ask that Larry Emery, Commander, if you would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, with us this evening, we have the Military Order of the Purple
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A silent prayer, and I would ask that Larry. Thank you. The clerk call the roll, please.
Mr. Gaynor,
Here.
Mr. McClone,
Here.
Mr. Carrot,
Here.
Mr. Chowsley,
Here.
Ms. Whipke, here, Mr. Kernan,
Mr. Kernan is excused.
Mr. Pelot.
Here. As I mentioned, we have some distinguished guests with us this evening, and the mayor has some presentations that he would like to give out. So at this time, I will turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I personally would like to thank each and every one of you for being here this evening. More important, thank you for your service. I do have a proclamation on behalf of the city. I would like to take a moment and read it, if you'll just give me a moment. It's a proclamation. It says, "A Purple Heart City, whereas the people of the city of Norton have a great admiration and the utmost gratitude for all the men and women who have selflessly served their country and this community in the armed forces, and whereas have paid the high price of freedom by leaving their families and communities and placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all, and whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women of the city of Norton who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and the way of life enjoyed by our citizens. Whereas many men and women in uniform have given their lives while serving in the armed forces, and whereas many citizens of the community have earned the Purple Heart Medal as a result of being wounded while engaged in combat with an enemy force, construed as a singularly meritorious act of essential service, and whereas November 12th, 2018 has officially been designated as the day in the city of Norton to remember and recognize veterans who are recipients of the Purple Heart Medal. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mike Zita, Mayor of the City of Norton, hereby proclaim that Norton as a Purple Heart City, so designated, honoring the service and sacrifices of our nation's men and women in uniform, wounded or killed by enemy, while serving to protect the freedoms enjoyed by all Americans. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Norton to be affixed on this 12th day of November, 2018. Once again, thank you very much. At this time,
Thank you very much for having us here this evening.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be here as you're making your city a Purple Heart city, and in honoring all the veterans and all the people who have served. And throughout history, Americans have embarked, inspired, and lived up on our great national declaration that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Since 1776, Americans have been called upon to safeguard the principles through their service in uniform. Throughout the year, at times like this, we set time aside to pause, to reflect, and to recognize and to honor and celebrate the service and the sacrifice of those who have shouldered the immense burden and responsibility of defending our freedom. Through these gatherings, we also rededicate ourselves to fulfilling President Abraham Lincoln's charge to all Americans to care for those who have borne the battle and for their families. Today, less than 1% of the population bears the responsibility of our national defense. Today, just over 7% of all the Americans living today have worn the uniform of our nation. Our chapter of the Military Order of the Purple Heart is dedicated to serving all veterans of every generation and commitment with respect equal to their service and sacrifice. This is a mission that we consider our sacred duty. As we work with our veterans and try to mend bodies and spirits, guide our veterans to life-saving benefits, and as we try to provide honored resting places, let us all take pride in our willingness to fulfill our obligations for services already rendered, down payments already made, and wellness already sacrificed by veterans to whom we owe so very much. They should never be made in any way to feel that their service is not appreciated or that our memory of the cost that they have borne is just fading away. Our gratitude should be expressed to our veterans every single day of the year, not just on special days or holidays. In that way, our veterans and their families will never have to question the readiness of this great country to meet their needs to live productive lives with respect and dignity. There will never be enough that we can do for those who have given so much for the rest of us. And having them worry that their safety and security is something that is negotiable denies them of the respect and dignity that they have rightfully earned. We must do this, and we must do it well. For those future generations of Americans who deserve to have their constitutions protected and their freedoms preserved. On this day, Purple Heart, Chapter 699, and the city of Norton, Ohio, honors the service and sacrifice of the men and women who have served at various duty stations throughout the globe, and who have done so with unwavering commitments to protect all that we hold dear. On behalf of the Purple Heart, Chapter 699, the city of Norton, Ohio, and Americans everywhere, it is our privilege today and every day to help the entire nation to demonstrate its debt of gratitude to all those who have so willingly fulfilled citizenship's highest calling. May Almighty God bless everyone who has served, is serving now, and who will continue to serve our great nation in the future. As noted by the Military Order of the Purple Heart, the significance of the Purple Heart Medal is that the Purple Heart is never sought, but many have received. Remember, all gave some, but some gave all. Thank you so much for having us. And I have a couple of presentations for you, sir. If you would step over. First of all, we have another parking sign.
Okay, cool. Oh, awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
Cool.
And we have a flag that you can display here at your council or city hall or whatever. That's our,
Mayor, would you like to bring them maybe on
Up in the
this
front?
side here?
Yeah, let's come to
and
the, we'll come to the
Bring
front.
them,
Yeah,
all of you,
behind the rail.
please come forward.
Yeah.
and also we have a plaque. Where is the? Oh, you have it? Okay, we have a plaque for you. There again to display in your city hall or your council chambers or whatever. The Military Order of the Purple Heart Special Recognition Award is bestowed with pride to the city of Norton, Ohio, for your dedication and support honoring America's combat wounded veterans, becoming a Purple Heart City, presented by the Patriot member, Chapter 699, Military Order of the Purple Heart, USA. Thank you. Thank you again for having us. Pleasure. Thank you, Karen.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Before we start, one of the things that I would like to add is that we do have a designated parking space now out in the front of City Hall. We have signage out there as well as a marking in the pavement similar to the handicap. We also have, as you're entering the city, we have designated signs that are posted throughout as you enter, acknowledging that we are now a Purple Heart City. So I believe it is something that we should be quite proud of. There's not too many cities out there around in our vicinity that have that that honor. So that's something that we should take pride in having. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I see our other honored guest has arrived here, so it's perfect timing. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Okay. I would like to, actually, Senator Frank LaRose is here. He just stepped in, and I know that we just, about a week ago, just recently celebrated another victory. He is now our Secretary of State, and without further ado, I'd like to call him to the podium and welcome him to the city of Norton.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor, and Mr. President, and members of the council. Thank you so much for the chance to be here, and I'm here to recognize the bicentennial of the city of Norton on behalf of the state legislature. So I've prepared a proclamation that is signed by myself and the Senate President, as well as the Clerk of the Senate. I can read it if you will indulge. By Senator LaRose honoring the city of Norton on its bicentennial. Whereas the members of the Senate of the 132nd General Assembly of Ohio are pleased to congratulate the city of Norton on the auspicious occasion of its 200th anniversary, and whereas recognition of this prestigious milestone is a fitting tribute to the city of Norton, established as a part of Wolf Creek Township, the city was named after one of the original owners of the township, Birdsley Norton, and it has become known for its residents' integrity, spirit of collaboration, and willingness to work hard, all of which are exemplary qualities still manifested by its citizens today. And whereas throughout its existence, the city of Norton has enjoyed the benefits of a generous and civic-minded population, and those who currently make it their home take great pride in their community and its rich heritage. Their efforts have certainly made the area a pleasant and friendly place in which to live and work, and whereas America is only as strong as her individual communities, which are unique and which make a significant contribution to the culture of our state and nation. The anniversary of the City of Norton offers its citizens the opportunity to share their memories and experiences and to reflect on the benefits of life in this close-knit community, and they have built on the best traditions of the past to ensure a future filled with hope and promise. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the Senate of the 132nd General Assembly of Ohio, in adopting this resolution, applaud the City of Norton on its 200th anniversary and look with optimism to a future of peace and prosperity. And be it further resolved that the clerk of the Senate transmit a duly authenticated copy to the resolution to the City of Norton, which I'm of course doing today personally. So, thank you to each and every one of you. As a person who was born and raised in Copley Township, just up the road, it gives me personal great pleasure to congratulate you all on this auspicious occasion. So, thank you so much, everybody.
Senator, thank you. Anything else you'd like to add, Mayor?
That'll be all for you.
Moving on with the agenda then, we have Committee of the Whole, reports from standing committees. Anyone have anything? I would like to acknowledge Council's receipt of the October 2018 budget reports. And I'd also like to make a motion to add an ordinance for annual appropriations to tonight's agenda for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019.
I'll second.
Motion and second to add Ordinance 123, 2018 to tonight's agenda. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes.
Just for clarification for the public, this is for the budget.
Ron, do you want to elaborate on?
Is this the actual budget? I just wanted to, because it's,
Although I'm sorry, I've got bronchitis. It'll just be a first reading. We will not pass this until we get down close to in December, and I'll have an exhibit with all the funds and the amounts that are finally decided upon.
right, I
This is
just wanted to clarify.
balancing the books for the end of the year.
No, this is the actual
is the
budget.
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 This is the actual budget we're presenting for 2019.
So we can change it as we go along if necessary, but this way we've got everything all ready to go for the published information.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You'll add an exhibit later, so we'll amend it. Okay.
So the Exhibit A that was missing is actually being worked on right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I waited till, because normally there are several changes as we go through, so
Right.
there's no sense doing it and then have to do it again, so.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pelot,
Yes.
Ms. Whipke,
Yes,
Mr. Gaynor,
Yes.
Mr. McClone,
Yes.
Mr. Carrot,
Yes.
Mr. Towesley.
Yes.
Any other reports? Consideration of minutes. Any corrections, additions, or alterations of the minutes of the regular council meeting of October 22nd, 2018? Hearing none, those will be accepted as submitted. Any corrections, additions, or alterations of the special council meeting November 5th, 2018? Hearing none, those will also be accepted as submitted. Reports from officers, boards, and commissions, starting with the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I have nothing. I just have public service announcements that I'll conclude at the end of the meeting.
With the Purple Heart parking spot out there, would you like to elaborate any on it as far as?
Well, we just have, it's parked, it's actually painted similar to the handicap's in blue, the Purple Heart's painted in purple, as well as signage that's put right in front of it. We're just using that there to, if anybody comes to City Hall that is a Purple Heart recipient, we just want to have that spot available and be able to use for them right outside City Hall.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Messner?
I just want to advise council that the PR 25 radio note, last payment of $100,000 has been paid, so that note is now paid in full.
All right. Nobody else?
That's all you got.
We have no public hearings this evening. Introduction of new legislation. We have the ordinance that I added to tonight's agenda, so I'd like to offer Ordinance 123, 2018 for its first reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
The annual appropriation ordinance for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Norton for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019, and declaring an emergency.
We have no prior legislation to bring forth. Any unfinished business? Any new business? All right. The only thing that we have on the agenda for new business is the 2019 budget review. So at this point in time, I will turn this over to Mr. Messner, and we can start going through the 2019 budget.
Okay, we will start off this evening with the police. We'll go in order as it pertains into the budget itself. So we'll start off with police.
Can everybody see that screen okay? Miss Charlotte, can you see?
No, but that's all right. I'll look at my book.
Okay.
Here, let me see.
It's getting brighter as it warms up, so it'll probably get a little bit brighter.
Page 8.
This, a couple of things. We thought it would be beneficial for council, not only for budget hearings, but different times we have different guests that come in that want to use the overhead. So we've purchased the overhead projector for council chambers, and we're going to try to throw the budgets. As you discuss them, we'll throw the budgets up so everybody can see them out in the council chambers. And we're going to start with the police department, and Chief D'Alessandro is with us this evening.
is page 8, sorry, within your budgets there for the expense.
Yep.
Welcome, Chief.
Good evening.
I might say before the chief starts, as in the past, you'll remember with the old budgets, there was a yellow line that I used to use. Everything above the yellow line was personnel and benefits. You'll see it starts off police department, and then it says personnel, and then partway down, it'll say other, The other is the operational expenses, the personnel, or all the salaries and benefits. We're using the new analytics software program. So this is kind of a new presentation for you all. It was much easier to prepare the budget this year. It went actually much quicker. And the personnel expenses, there's actually a whole section that actually refers back to our VIP payroll software. It actually pulls numbers right out of our VIP, which is our administrative accounting software and payroll software. So, so with that, I'll let Chief start, and I think that he'll probably refer to you all if you have questions. You can ask Chief directly.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys tonight?
Good.
Did you want me to go line by line, or I know you guys have looked at this over the last week or so. Did you have any questions for me?
I would probably just hit maybe the bigger items, the highlights, maybe touch base on, we have no holiday pay at this point, which is kind of odd.
Correct, because the officers are paid that, I believe it's the second pay in December. Correct me if I'm, that's correct. So
that
that's
for
when
the-
they'll be paid for all their holidays.
Really? Okay.
I guess, Chief, so the audience knows, can we tell them how many full-time and part-time policemen we have so we can?
Yeah, there's currently 16 full-time police officers. I have 5 part-time.
Now, is that, are we going to have an SOR officer this year? Is that embedded in here right now, or?
It is not. I will tell you, I've had a couple of conversations with Mr. Addis since last week, since the income tax levy passed. And one of the things I told him is that we needed to have these discussions. We need to get going if they did want to do an SRO starting with the next school year.
Okay.
Have we budgeted for one?
For a full-time SRO, no.
I thought they were taking care of that.
It would be a split. If you remember correctly, the MOU that we currently have
Right.
is 60% that the school would pay, 40% that the city would pay.
Oh, I thought they'd made up their own little thing where they were going to take on somebody themselves as a part-time.
No, so what they did was, we do currently have 2 officers in 2 of the school buildings. I have 1 in the high school, 1 in the middle school, and they're paying those officers a side job rate as a contractor, just like they would for a football game, basketball game.
Thank you.
I've got a couple questions, if I may.
Yes.
I think the first is going to be for you, Mr. Messner. In our books, it says, it gives us full actual years. Full year 18 is just through October, or that's not, is that correct?
It's actually the full year.
Budget.
18 is the budget, the 2018 budget, and then the next column, full year actual. Well, actually, it's backwards. It's full year actual 2018 is through October 26th. Those figures.
Okay.
And the full budget for 2018 is the actual budget that you approved.
Right, okay. So with that in mind, down at health insurance toward the bottom, 4 lines up of what was on the screen right there. We had budgeted 385 last year, and currently have only spent 217, and then we're proposing around 376 this year. Is there an explanation why we're so, I mean, I'm not complaining that we haven't spent much this year, but why it's so low this year?
It's actually, that's a known number. We know how many full-time we have, and we know whether they're on the family plan, single, or employee with child, or just employee with spouse. So those are actual numbers. that I can actually, with analytics, now I can project accurately because I know what those are going to be. And as you are aware, we have already talked to Medical Mutual about the next 2 years, so we know what those increases are going to be. So that's an actual number. We still have 3 or 4 pays yet to go, so that's going to creep up. But also, that number can change as full-time people fall off, and we did have full-time officers. Chief, I'm trying to remember, was it two full-time officers that terminated employment with us, or I know Brody was one. Was there another one?
Yeah, there were 2 this year.
So
It did.
when that happens, they fall off, they're not being charged. They stop charging us for those.
So through the analytics, you're confident the 376 is pretty.
That should be
Okay,
a
great.
right on accurate number.
One other question I have, it's in the next column under other, for vehicle maintenance. This year, we budgeted 28,000 plus. We spent just under 15,000, and then we're budgeting 32 for next year. Is it necessary, I guess, to be budgeted that high, would be my question.
Here's the issue for that. So as it currently stands, every month we have each vehicle, each of the marked patrol cars, oil change and tire rotation. And at this point, we're getting it done at Rick's Auto Body. And I did go out and get some bids for 2019. He came in lowest, but we're paying for all of that. We're paying somebody to do that. We're paying somebody to replace brake pads. So that's a number that you really are not sure. You know, we could have a really good year, we could have a bad year.
Has the city thought about one maintenance person taking care of the service vehicles, the police vehicles, the fire vehicles? Would that make sense to have a service person to be able to take care of all those rather than paying an outside company?
Well, with our city mechanic, we just, as of Friday, he resigned. So now we don't even have that, but we're looking now to obtain a new mechanic, so.
Might be a good timing.
Yeah. Well, in the past, I believe some of that is, I mean, I think Larry, when he comes up, Mr. Hess, when he comes up from service, some of that was being done, but for each day or each time that they go through and do maintenance on the police cruisers, that's less time that mechanic is working in the service department. So it's just got to be.
I'm referring to a full-time mechanic. Takes care of all the city vehicles. That's all he does. He doesn't go out and plow roads. He doesn't go out and do anything else.
Right. Well,
That's pretty much what we have.
yeah,
with
Brandon, the
Light,
guy
he
that we
was-
had as a mechanic did not plow. He was a mechanic.
And that's okay. That's
And,
all he
yeah,
did.
that's about it,
Right.
yeah.
And he
Yeah,
was-
I met Brandon. I was down there.
Inundated with stuff to do, and a lot of times did not have the time
Correct.
to take care of the vehicles and do rotations and oil changes and so forth as to what we were paying.
I mean, in addition to all the trucks, snowplow trucks, which during the wintertime, those break down. The normal trucks, he also takes care of all the park department, their mowers. He's got his hands full with a lot of stuff in that. I know Mr. Hess, and he'll probably speak to it more when he comes. And if we could afford it, it probably would not be a bad idea to have 2 full-time mechanics.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, if we're budgeting 32 here, and I don't know what we've budgeted for the fire or service, you know, maybe it makes sense to look at somebody that would take care of just their vehicles or, you know, be used as a floater in between. I don't want to get him as a floater and then we're still paying out to some auto body shop or some mechanic shop out on top of having 2. So maybe it's something we can look at. All right, sorry, moving on.
Anything else, Mr. Towsley?
No, I think that, so I guess in short, Chief, so what you're saying is you've just allowed yourself a little buffer for a worst-case
I did.
scenario. Okay.
Can we go back to the health insurance there, Mr. Messner? 2016 actual was 270, might as well say 280,000. Full year for 17 was 303. Full year budgeted this year was 385. We're at 217, even with 2 months to go. So if we divide that figure by 10 for the first 10 months, that's $21.7 thousand a month. So 2 more months, we're looking at 43.4 on top of what we've already put out. So that's 260. And we're budgeting 375.
Increase.
It can't be that big of an increase.
It is
What's the percentage?
9.9%.
I thought that was over 2 years.
It is.
Yeah, I thought, isn't it over 2 years?
It is.
So,
It's, you might as well say it's a 10% raise, but you won't see it change next year. And that
okay,
would
so
be-
even if you take a 10%, so you're talking 260, another 26,000 on top of that. I mean, you're not even at 300, and we're budgeting 385. Can we look into that a little more and kind of see what that includes? And
I thought Scotty said that software creates that number, right?
I'm just wondering how that software is coming up with it, though.
It's actually a plug number because we know what it is. Basically, for insurance coverage, it's a drop-down. For example, family coverage is almost $3,000 a month. And employee and child is almost $1,700 a month. Single employee is almost $1,000 a month. Employee and spouse is almost $2,000 a month. So health insurance is very expensive. And it's, this is based over 12 months. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I'm sitting here looking right at the numbers right here, that it's actually, I mean, I'll check it again, but I'm pretty sure that's an
Can you
accurate
shoot me a
number.
copy of it? Is it just a breakdown of number of employees and policies?
Afterwards,
I
I
don't
can
care
show
about
you.
names.
I
Okay,
can't-
that's good.
I can't actually copy the personnel piece out of it, but I can show you
That's
on my
fine.
computer.
All right, anybody else have any other questions for Chief?
The other thing too, Mr. President, to remember is that with 2 full-time employees dropping off for a good part of the year, with family plans at $3,000 a month, that's a pretty good number in itself too. So
Okay.
that's what makes up a lot of the difference.
For the 218, were the 2 employees that dropped off.
Right?
That's why we're down to 218. And then for 19, we're looking at 376, which is almost actually 10,000 less than what we projected for 2018.
Yeah, and that's actually working off of, and I believe we're up to full speed on full-time, correct? We have
We
a
are,
full
yes.
complement. So,
So the 16 is where we need to be?
Correct.
The radios that we're just paying off that note on, or just paid off, how long is that system supposed to last? Or when are they looking at?
This is the state-of-the-art radio.
For at least 30 years.
Anyone else have questions for the chief? Or Chief, do you have anything else to add here?
I don't, unless you have questions.
We have your police cars on a rotational replacement budget
Correct,
now.
and I budgeted for 2 for 2019.
And
So we're pretty good with cruisers. You know, we've got a newer fleet. Same thing with equipment. We're, you know, been very fortunate.
Right. So nothing, no big expense coming up there?
I don't see any.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chief, I see we're in the paper where we had a cruiser hit.
We did. So
How much damage is there and what's covered by insurance and what's not?
it's all covered by insurance.
The other man's, I hope?
Well, yeah, was a female driver.
Yeah. So that's taken care of money-wise.
Well, we
No
pay.
one's hurt, right?
I think we pay the $500 deductible because we go through Wickert, and then Wickert ends up subrogating them.
But no one was hurt or anything?
No one was hurt. We
Which
did,
should
we were
get that.
transporting a female prisoner. She was released and transported to the hospital. But
And we'll get that $500 back too. And that's so, and I might remind council that under police cars, you see only $18,000. Just be reminded that that is funded out of Fund 140. That, basically, the $18,000 is just for the equipment, the decals, the light bars and stuff like that.
Okay. And that's working well then, Chief?
yes,
Okay.
I had a question. Since you said that the radios, the PR-25s, right,
Correct.
where we just paid off the last 100,000? Well, this line item 54431, it's got nothing there for the actual 2018 year.
Do you see the next column right beside it, 38,000?
Uh-huh.
That's was the police part of the payment, so that's.
Oh,
what was
they're,
paid.
okay, we got those spread out over
Yeah, so
everybody.
the radios are spread between.
Right,
police,
service and fire.
And service, and each one of them paid a piece of that note.
Okay, thank you.
And your overtime hours, Chief, where do you see most of that coming from?
you know, officers taking vacation comp time. If I can't supplement our part-time officers with that, or I've got multiple officers, that's what we're seeing with that. Anytime we have an emergency situation where we call in the shifts, that's where we see it. You know, keep in mind our minimum staffing is 3 officers on the road at all times, so that's my minimum. I'd never go below that.
Well, I think you guys are doing a fine job, even with all the abuse you've been taking in the paper lately, along with us. But no, I think your department does a very nice job.
Thank you. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but I've been supporting my guys with the No Shave November this month. I know, I don't know how you guys feel, but I think it does well. Things like this kind of boost morale. The guys seem to love it, so.
May I make one more comment?
Sure.
I would just like to acknowledge, if everything I see, your budget's actually down this year, and I want to acknowledge that, and that's a big deal for me, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully they don't come up with shave your head in November or
No.
something. All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right.
Chief.
Our next presenter is Mr. Hess. It's page 23 in your books. Scroll down.
Good evening, council members.
Good evening, sir.
Give us just a second to get to the, on the overhead for you.
Do you have all your new vehicles now, Mr. Hess?
We are, we had to get into a slot for a build for next year. And we're waiting on our 5-ton plow unit that was supposed to be ready either in January or February. And then we're taking the bed off of the existing truck that we have and putting it on this truck to kind of save money. So it'll take a little bit of time. So sometime in February, we're hoping to have it ready to go. We'll see. Because everybody's swamped because the economy's so good. Everyone's buying trucks.
Yeah.
And then we have a 1-ton that we're waiting on. They're putting a bid on that one, and so we're just waiting for that work to be done. And the company that's doing that is swamped as well. And everybody's behind. We're just trying to be patient and wait on things.
Salt truck wise, plow truck, I mean, are you setting pretty good right now?
The mayor mentioned earlier that we lost our mechanic Friday. He took a leave of absence and he's pursuing some other things. So about the worst time that you could possibly lose a mechanic is right now. So I have enough trucks to this evening to send out 4, which is what I need. We have a few issues on some trucks, which I'm going to need to. I mean, I know what I want to do. We're working on a plan to get those things done in a. Just so you know, sometimes when you send your trucks out, you get in a line, and you're not the priority always. So that's why having someone in the house is always the best, because they're going to take care of your stuff. So that's kind of, we're trying to work through that. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but we'll get through it. But right now we're okay. But our fleet is still pretty rough, and we're getting there. And I appreciate council's help in accomplishing that. I really do. But if you like, I'd like to answer your question prior to, with the mechanic. The industry standard is roughly 30 units, whether that be a truck, a car. We have backhoes, all those things. It's about all the mechanic can handle, and we're well past that. If we found out early on when we were maintaining Chief's vehicles that it just was too much for one mechanic. So that's why we asked Chief if he could help us out and have it sent out, because there's just no way one person could do police, fire, and service. And that's been the problem in the past. That's why our equipment was neglected pretty badly in the past. So it just didn't make sense to sacrifice one department for another. And the chief, he needs his vehicles just as bad as we do, if not worse. I mean, he doesn't need to wait, or should he wait on anybody? So to entertain another mechanic, I would be thrilled. I would be thrilled. We could keep things in the house, and we could do a lot better job servicing everything. So I would welcome that.
I think it's worth exploring, depending where we're at budget wise and stuff.
I do have a question. Two things. First, one is I'd like to know if we have the facilities really to maintain all the equipment, if there's things that are still needed, or if our facilities are adequate. And I do have a question after that.
Okay. Not completely. Like, for instance, when we're going to take a bed off of existing truck, Dan, we do have to send things out because we don't have the equipment, because it takes specialized equipment to do some of the work. So no, we don't have the ability to keep everything in-house for that very reason.
Following along with that same question, has there been consolidations, partnerships across borders? Is this a possibility that we could share some service area space with another local city? I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't know if that's a good idea even. It's an idea that...
Or with the school system.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all those things are interesting options. I would just guess that most cities would not want to share their facility because they have enough going on in it. Some minor help here and there, but I have a really good relationship with Fairlawn, and they've helped us out a few times. But to go and use their lifts, or it probably wouldn't be a good idea. I don't know what their city would think about insurance-wise and all those things. So, but I mean, I would entertain any kind of help if we could improve our facility or our ability to take care of all those trucks and everything. I would certainly entertain that.
One of the things, though, that we would like to keep in mind, or would need to keep in mind, though, that a second mechanic, we're looking at approximately $100,000. between
I think with all the
benefits
benefits,
and-
it's,
Yeah.
Ron would probably have a.
Not that we're not, in agreement of that we, could possibly look at moving that direction, but with that being the case, we're going to have to find out where that's coming from.
Well,
so.
I know when I was down talking to Mr. Hess the one day and met Brandon that day, I mean, I saw how swamped the guy was. I mean, I understand that everybody's swamped, but I'm thinking if police department's paying to take their vehicles out, Chief, are you paying to take your vehicles outside? Yeah. All right, so we've got money there, we've got money there. We've got a guy that's behind to no fault of his own. Maybe it makes sense to see, where we can make some cuts to bring that extra mechanic in to, like Mr. Hess said, have everything in-house. When you have your own control, now you can prioritize, you know exactly what the deadline is, what needs to be on the road, when it needs to be on the road. And to me, it just makes better sense to, I would rather pay somebody ourselves than pay an outside entity.
Unfortunately for Mr. Hess and the service department, it's kind of like mentality would be if it's police or fire because they're emergency vehicles, they need to be taken care of first.
Right.
And then with the street department, if the street guys are going to, to patch a hole or to fix something and their truck breaks down, at least they're in the city and the emergency may have to wait, whereas they're not responding for the majority of the time, they're not responding to a emergency call, whether it be medical, fire, or police. So, I mean, that's kind of where they've been. And unfortunately, that's when he's talking about having one department kind of getting beat up because of the three. It seems like that's kind of how it's been in the past, but
we made a big impact on a lot of the equipment that he was in dire need of. But a lot of that, the preventive maintenance that would normally take place probably wasn't taking place the way it should.
Correct.
Just because of taking care of the police cars, the fire department, things like that. All of a sudden now it's snowing. Now you got to get that truck out on the road. You got the plow truck out there. It breaks down. Well, that's your only. You don't have any spare plow trucks, so now you're trying to rush to get that taken care of. Yeah, I mean, we can, continue to try to Band-Aid things, but, I mean, at some point we have to start to look how many hours are really required for this position with the amount of equipment we have in the city and what's the dollar value associated with that amount of hours. Does it make sense to hire another mechanic? So that's all I was going after.
Yeah.
Here's just to give council a little bit bigger picture. The mechanic's salary plus benefits is $78,000. What council has to remember is that I get what's called a certificate of resources from the county budget commission. At this particular point, as you can see, we're running a budget for service department. Let me get to the bottom of my page.
1.5, I believe, are close.
With that mechanic that I'm referring to.
1,803,000
should be split between the three areas.
That can be done. It's a little difficult accounting wise, but it can be done. But out of the 1.8 million that we're budgeting, we're probably, the only thing that funds the service department is motor vehicle license and gas. Other than that, I have to supplement them from the general fund. Normally, I supplement almost $700,000.
Right.
So that's the squeeze that we're between.
Right.
The administration has talked about this now for probably the last year. We would love to do it. It's just a matter of trying to balance everything with, the purchase of new equipment. And you're right, the previous director didn't do a good job turning his equipment over. So now we're trying to play catch up for all the equipment and we're doing a good job. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. And I mean, it would be great to have that. When we get to fire, we've got some issues going on there. About the only one that's in really good position to pay is the police department because they are part of the general fund. The other two are enterprise funds. So just to give council a little bit of background on that.
If I could, Larry, you say the mechanic is going on leave of absence. Do you know the time period?
6 months.
Just 1 month?
6.
Oh, 6
Yeah,
months.
the contract allows for 6.
Okay.
With approval.
Do you have the ability under civil service to replace him for the 6 months?
Yes, I mean, we're working towards that, I think. It's going to take some time.
You mean by hiring a new person or how?
Yeah, but it's going to take some time. I wouldn't be surprised if it's minimum 2 months.
You mean to find somebody that's capable?
Yeah, it'll have to be tested and all that.
Right.
It's a process.
So when you do replace him, he has that ability to come back to his job?
He could, if he chose.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I don't think this is really a discussion we want to get too deep into on council floor. Not knowing all the
Okay.
details.
Okay,
Just not knowing all the details.
okay. Go ahead.
I'll explain after the meeting.
It's okay, I don't care. I had some other questions, but that's all right. I'm
You
not
have
gonna
somewhere
get
to go
into it.
right now with him out?
I'm sorry?
You have somewhere to go with him out? Have you talked to someone?
We have some,
Like Rick, he says he goes to Rick or whatever.
we're diesel mechanic.
Okay.
I'm not sure what Rick, I don't deal with Rick. I'm
Right,
not sure
right.
if he's a diesel, but we do have
You
options.
have someone you can go to if you have
We have
problems?
options.
Oh, good, okay.
Yes. Did you want me to go over my department just for?
Yeah.
Okay. We have, in our department, we have 8 service workers, which are, primarily road. We have 1 parks and grounds worker, an office manager, and myself, and an open mechanics position right now. For sure, I am losing one of my guys in January. He's going to retire, Dan Ellinger, and possibly my grounds and my grounds guy may be going in July as well. So I may have 2 openings coming up this year. So we'll need to address that.
Now, the one that will be leaving, I think you said Parks guy might be leaving or is leaving in January.
That's a road guy, one of our operators. Dan, he is leaving in January.
It's a definite, are we planning ahead? Are we advertising now or soon? Because, like you said, it's
I hope so.
not just a matter of throwing an advertisement out there and hiring somebody in a couple weeks. It's a lengthy process.
Right, I hope so.
Can we go over some of the expense items here? Unless you had other things you wanted to cover first?
No, whatever questions you have for me.
Just looking at like the big jump in utilities this year versus the actual this year. We've paid not even $8,000. Is that because of the lighting and stuff like that we put in, or what attributed to that large decrease? But then we're budgeting 27 for next year.
Well, I'm sure the energy audit proved pretty financially responsible and a good return. I would just say that it's probably more of maybe a bit of a padded in case.
We have natural gas coming online where we were just a few months of electric. Now we're going to have a full year in 19 of all natural gas because we've gone from electric heaters to gas heaters.
It was fully electric, everything, and so that's.
So you're saying in 2018, it wasn't even a complete year
No.
of this savings, so this should be more significant, hopefully.
Yes. I think we came in line maybe in March or early April. So
Just as the winter was going off.
just as the winter was going off.
And I guess that's kind of where the confusion lies. 2016 and 17, we were about 20 grand a year. We budgeted 26 this year. We've spent 8. But yet, next year, we're budgeting 27.
Yeah.
It just,
You know what my philosophy is. Budget expenses high and revenues low. And I suspect that with the price of gas and everything else going up and electric going up, we're going to see increases in utilities.
I see the 2 services jumped up to 25,000. Have we got something going on there this year that I noticed it was only 1,400 right now and 10,000?
And that's which line are you referring?
That's the professional services and tree services.
That's our grass cutting expense is under that. Our outside grass cutting company is under that, for part of that, Mr. McGlone.
And then the 25,000 for the tree service, that's in order to qualify for Tree City, you need a
Oh,
budget
okay.
of 25,000.
You have to do that,
Yeah,
okay.
and we, I mean, we use it.
Okay.
All the trimming and everything.
Gotcha,
So,
okay.
yeah.
and the salt, obviously, I think most people are aware of how much it's went up, but we've spent nothing this year out of.
No, we got in 500 ton of salt at a price of 102 a ton, which reflects a huge increase from last year. We wanted to try to be a little bit, I would say, conservative and not overspend. We should have an allocation in January if things go as they're supposed to for another 2,700 and almost 50 tons. If you're aware or not, I made the decision to mix sand in with our salt. We have some pure salt and some that's mixed to try to spread the effects of it and make it last longer. And just pray for a light winter. But yeah, that's very unexpected thing. Had no idea that the price was going to go, and I actually got it for a bargain. You know, there was other people that were going to have to pay 120 a ton. So, I mean, you call it a deal, but yeah, it's going to be a challenge. I'm hoping we have the I hope we don't have a bad winter.
So just so council is aware, before the end of the year, I will write a purchase order and encumber that 215,000 and take it over into 2019. I'm not going to lose that money to the bottom line because come January, most of that is due to the Cargill problem up at the lake, the issues that they're having.
Normally, this time of year, that money would have been spent. The salt's in the barn. Excuse me. The salt's in the barn, and it's a non-issue. We're ready to go. And we didn't think it was wise to spend more for that money because it's coming down to 80 a ton in January. So it'll go a lot farther.
And our normal cost was about 58. So you can see even going to 80 was a push. But so the plan is we'll encumber the 215,000, take it over into 2019, and we'll spend that the first part of the year to buy salt that we would have bought in early 2018. 230,000 will be then to buy midsummer to late fall for 2019. Fill the barns back up. Hopefully, we don't have that problem again 2 years in a row in that, but that's the plan going forward.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought that we bought like a year ahead. We put in our bids for.
We always do.
Okay.
We always do. Due to Cargill's problem, we couldn't buy salt like we normally do.
Excuse me.
In that, so we're actually a year behind in making the purchase to fill our barns up. So, Mr. Hess and I are both praying every night and keeping our fingers crossed that we don't get snow.
And how old are our barns now? I remember approving them years ago, but what kind of shape are they in? Do we need to be looking at that? Do we have enough storage?
Yes, the storage capability is pretty amazing. I came from a prior city and nowhere near the capacity we had. we had enough salt last year and then some. You usually get that thing filled and you know you're pretty good shape for the winter.
I've got a
And they're in
question.
good shape?
Sorry.
Yes.
The roofs? Yes, Mr. Towesley.
Last week, I believe it was last week, council approved the purchase of a Freightliner. And that was to be taken out of the 219 budget because it wouldn't be ready till January, if I'm understanding correctly.
Correct.
Where do I see that reflected here? And then after that, do you have any major purchases planned that we should be aware
We
of?
do have some, yes. I do believe that's all in our equipment lines.
It's
And,
under the lease, under equipment lease, the very last line.
Okay.
601.
It's basically, that is the compilation of a number of truck leases that total that, plus a little reserve in case we have something else that we need to buy. That truck will be in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000 payment over 3 to 5 years, depending if I can get the rate. I'd like to go 3 years, as I've mentioned to council. May go 5, may go 4, just depending what kind of rate I can get. But that's where it's at, Mr. Towesley, under
Okay.
equipment lease.
Okay, and then on top of that, do you have some,
Yeah, we definitely want to try to get 2 more new zero turns, 60-inch. We like to kind of stay with the Kubota that we have currently, just to standardize. It's a good practice. And then we'll probably would sell off the 2 of our worst mowers from there. We're probably looking at getting a Durapatcher. The one we currently have is in really bad shape, and I don't think it's going to be worth fixing. Then we've been demoing a sweeper unit that'll give you the capability of sweeping the streets and also vectoring out some of the catch basins, which, you know, if we need something done, we have to contract that out.
That's going to come under the stormwater management for the sweeper. We'll get to that later. That's not in his budget.
All right, I was thinking, didn't we look at?
We looked at a Vector back in the day, never made a purchase of a Vector. This is not a Vector, though. It's basically more of a street sweeper, but will have suction capabilities to suck out storm catch basins and so forth. But I don't know that we'll be able to do the same level of work that we would be able to do with a Vector, but this will do.
Yeah,
get the job done.
I know there
it's
was.
It's a pretty solid machine.
Yeah.
The dual capacity of it, the one we looked at. So
There was some concerns, though, with the condition of the catch basins before, whether or not they'd be able to withstand that much vac.
I mean, if that's the case, then we should be getting in there and getting them fixed. You know, we can evaluate them a lot better that way. You know, because we're not.
I'm good with that.
We're not actively popping lids and looking at. You know, we're chasing problems basically.
Okay. Did you have more questions there, Mr. Towesley?
no, that's it, as long as that's everything you had as far as purchases.
We probably will also be looking at an Explorer that would be used for zoning and administration, and possibly another pickup truck. I don't know if we would get. I haven't priced everything yet, but I don't know if we'd be getting a 4-wheel drive or a 2-wheel drive. But if the prices are comparable, if there's not a big difference, I would probably get the 4-wheel drive and have a little bit better capability with it. But we'll tackle that when the time comes.
Would those be found under equipment or equipment lease as far as the budget goes?
Those are under equipment.
Equipment, okay.
Yeah, I mean, in this area, I agree. The 4-wheel drive is definitely probably the better option, even if it's $5,000 more, whatever.
Right.
Do you have like a updated list of what your equipment, your major items, like your salt trucks? What year are they? How many miles? What?
I have a list. I could, if you'd like, I could provide that to council.
Yeah, if you would, and
to the clerk, and she
Maybe
could-
kind of what grade you give them, I don't know, between an A and an F, and, what kind of shape is it in? If you give it a C, then does that mean that it has maybe 3 years left in its life, or, I know that's kind of,
a lot of our equipment is about 20 years old, which is, in a good environment, it's a lot of years. But, that salt and all that, it just eats them up.
right.
Really, we could have some catastrophic failures at any point. I'm just
Right,
hoping.
those are going to happen.
Yeah.
But
I
I
can-
saw the shape of a lot of the equipment down there, and I want to make sure that we're addressing those issues, trying to get you the proper equipment so you're
Right.
able to do
And I appreciate
the
that.
functions that you do, because you service the city, you service and make life easier for the residents. So I want to make sure that we have what you need to do your job.
I appreciate that. The goal the goal we have is to get a new 5-ton truck every year until we get an updated fleet.
Okay.
And we're a few more years away from that.
What about the mowers?
Mowers, if I have 4 one-year-old to 2-year-old machines, I'm very happy. That'll keep us going.
And then once we get to that 4, if we can get those into a rotating, so it's like 1 a year or whatever.
Yeah, mowers, they hold their value pretty well if we don't go into too long, but yeah, that save the money on the trade-in, so your expenses for new are greatly reduced. That's kind of the plan going forward.
And the
With
5-ton,
with everything.
That's the plow trucks.
Like
salt.
everything, mower, everything.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Hess? Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
If you want to turn to the fire budget, Fund 105 is on page 28.
Welcome, Chief.
Good evening.
Chief, why don't you start us off, how many full-time, part-time you have right now?
We have 10 full-time firefighters. 20, well, we are at 20 part-time guys right now. We are 2 short, but we are working on that problem this week.
Okay.
So we'll be 10 full-time, 22 part-time here in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Let me give a brief explanation before Chief gets started. As all of you are aware, we've played from a statement of cash position. We've played a real catch-up game. We've been cash negative for quite some time in Fund 105. That's the levy, the 2012 levy fund. 106, Fire and EMS, has been more cash rich. So in order to try to balance that out, and also with the statement or the certificate of resources, some of the older council will recall that in the past, we have broken expenses out 65% to Fund 105 and 35% to 106. We've changed that for 2019. We're going to budget 60% to 106 and 40% to 105. And you'll notice as you go down through both 105 and 106, you'll see a number of lines like maintenance of facilities, equipment service contracts, materials and supplies, equipment. That has all been moved out of those lines and have been moved into the capital side of the fire budget, which is Fund 107. So we're doing everything in our power to budget appropriately so that we can maintain service at acceptable standards and yet not have to go back for an increase in levy. That's coming up as it is, I believe, in 2020, Chief?
21.
21. So 2021, the 2012 levy, well, actually it's 2016 levy, I guess now, was approved. That will have to be revoted on by our residents, and Chief and I have been discussing probably at that time, just to save, to stay in pace with the property taxes, which since 2008 have gone down, which has really put a major hurt on the fire department because
Whose property tax went down?
the county's property tax.
Well, I need to have a talk with somebody.
I'll tell you what, did yours go up?
Yep.
You're one of the few. We've seen serious decreases in the city of Norton in property tax
2008?
since 2008. Chief keeps a pretty tight schedule on that, and he and I kick that back and forth quite often. So the administration has worked hard with Chief Schultz, trying to balance the fire department so that we don't have to go back out and ask, especially with all the trouble that the schools had trying to get theirs passed. We sure didn't want to be out at the same time they were. So, with that being said, I'll let you ask Chief any questions that you might have.
The original was 65 or 64, Fund 105?
40%. It was initially 65%.
Originally
But
65.
drop it from 65 to 40.
Okay, now we're going to go 40.
And then for Fund 106, that was 35, and it's now 60.
From my own knowledge, what causes one to be, as you said, cash rich and the other one not, and then to flip?
Chief might.
One of the levies is from 2007, so it's kind of flattened out as far as revenue it's generating. The longer those levies hang out there, the less money they generate, if that makes sense.
I'll
So
take your explanation.
That's why it wound up the way it was. That if everybody, well, not all of you, but some of you can recall back in 2007, we were working off levies from the 90s. So we're kind of headed that same place. So we're going to need to address that at some point. But that's how that happens.
Okay, thank you.
Because the levies are based on the home valuation the year that they pass. It doesn't
Correct.
continue to increase.
Right. We do not get an increase. We can get a decrease, but if your property tax goes up, we don't get the increase. We only take the hit for the decrease.
And the levy has not changed in years, the levy amounts. The one
2000.
levy is what, 4.6, and the other one is 3.6?
3.6.
So those haven't changed. So as Chief said, when the property values go down, which they have, according to the reports we're getting from the county auditor, we take the hit. But when they go up, they don't help
I'm
us.
surprised you went down because mine went up too, so
So-
mine went up 10%.
Well,
Yeah. Mine wasn't small.
As yours rises, we don't
Right, you
we don't
don't,
get
yeah.
an increase.
But I just thought our properties went up, tax went up. But
Yeah, I can send you the graph that
Oh, I believe- I
that
see what you're
built.
saying.
It took a real nosedive at 2008.
So who got it? The county?
That's my question. Where does it go if you don't get it?
Well,
Because I'm paying it.
I wish I had the answer. That whole system confuses me.
Yeah, I don't expect you to really know that answer.
Yeah, that
but-
whole county auditor treasurer thing is really a thorn in my side, especially as far as budgeting goes.
Ron? Who got it?
I'm guessing the people that were supposed to get it got it. We're getting the percentage that we're supposed to get and no more in that.
Well, if they keep getting a bigger piece and we get less, there's something wrong with this picture.
Well, it's not that we're getting less, we're holding steady because our 4.6 is only generating so much money. So if it goes up, I still only get 4.6. If it goes down, I get less. They don't hold it at 4.6. They hit me with that. They say, I'm sorry you didn't get as much this year, not giving you as much. You can look at your funds in the revenue side, you can look at your property taxes and see the 4-year spread as it went across. You can also pull your CAFRs from 2017 and look back in the statistical pages. There is a section on real estate taxes, and you can actually see the numbers back there because I compile those every year to put in the statistical notes. So that'll give you more of an explanation.
That didn't tell me anything.
Sorry, that's the best I can tell you right now.
Well, maybe we need to get a hold of county and ask them where'd the money go.
Chief, I'll ask you the same question. Well, actually, I think you had turned it over to you to go ahead and
Yes.
talk about your department a little bit. What are your current needs? What's the shape of your fleet?
Vehicle-wise, we're in good shape. We purchased a new squad in 2016. We re-chassied an old one in 2018. We have one vehicle left that we purchased in 2008. That will be re-chassied at some point in the future. We're trying to get as much use out of that third vehicle as we can so we can get a spread. Historically, there were 2 ambulances, and they were both purchased at the same time, so they both fell apart at the same time. So now we're starting to get a little bit of a spread in between those vehicles. So vehicle-wise, we're doing really well. We actually, it doesn't reflect it in here, but we saved about $650,000 or $700,000 for 19 because we should have had to replace an engine next year. But in 2008, when we purchased the rescue pumper, that now replaces that truck that will be taken out of the fleet. So we were kind of thinking years down the road when we did that. So engine-wise, we're in great shape. Squad-wise, we're in great shape. Our biggest issue right now is run volume and personnel and.
And what volume are you up this year versus last year?
Well, actually, right now, as of the other day, we're about 32 calls below last year. But last year was a record-setting year for us, so I don't know that we'll catch that number. I'm hoping we don't, but we may. You know, we haven't had a good snow yet.
How many structural fires this year?
I don't have that number with me. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I can pull it up and send it to you.
Okay. Yeah, if you would.
It's on the fire department website. You can go in and pull up the fire department.
Statistics.
That'll show you stats from, they're actually loaded in there every month. There's a printout that goes onto the website that shows you our monthly run volume.
So between the three, 2.6 right there.
I'm sorry?
Between the three funds, 105, 6, and 7, about 2.6, and because with obviously changing what percentage where, I mean, only real comparison that you can really make is look at total of the three funds in comparison to what they were previous years. And I think the actual spend last year was 2.
One good thing is this has really borne out my theory of budget expenses high, keep revenue low. This has worked out for the fire department because we've never hit the actual budget that we've budgeted. We've always come in under, which is good. There, for the couple of years that we were up, the state auditors were on my case because the county said we only had this much money to spend, and we were budgeting about $100,000 to $150,000 over, and they said you are only permitted to spend what your resources are. And my comment to them was, okay, which house that starts on fire do you want me not to respond to, or which person that needs the squad do you not want me to send the squad? You know, we had our call rate was exacerbated because of the opiate crisis. They were going out all the time, and that takes money. Costs fuel, wear and tear, repairs. It took money, and that's why I say it's becoming pretty evident that, you know, we are going to have to take a look at the levy at some point in time. You know, we're doing everything we can not to have to go back to the citizens for a levy increase, but somewhere along the line we probably will. I mean, it's coming for renewal in 21 anyways, but we're going to have to continue to look at that.
And what's the levies bring in right now?
In 105, in 2016, it brought in $962,000, and 17, $966. I expected 965. It's up to 285 or 985. In Fund 106. It was 439, 441, 450. And for the capital account, 188, 189, 190. So about 1.1, 1.2 million.
That's over 1.5, isn't it?
But
You said 985, 450, and 190?
that was back in 16.
No, that's this year.
108,
1.6?
that's about right. I don't have my calculator in front of me, but I'll take your word for it.
All right, so, and we don't, do we get any money back from somebody that's in an accident, their insurance company, if they live outside the city? We bill the insurance, do we actually get that money?
Yes, we do get EMS billing money back. We were just dealing with that last week because of changes in healthcare. There's been a pretty significant reduction in what we've collected for this year. We usually end the year with over 300 and I'd say about $330,000, and we're not going to probably be anywhere near that this year. We just talked to the billing company last week as to what's going on, and it's just a change in healthcare.
you look on page 6 of your revenue, about middle of the page, you'll see under charge for services, a line called EMS rescue fees. That's the number.
Perfect.
So you can see it was 257, went up to 278. I budgeted, here's where I really went astray. I budgeted 375, but so far it's only come in at 213, so I really missed that this year. So I dropped back down. I dropped the budget to 265.
Chief, do you have any major items you see yourself bringing before council in the coming year, purchases?
No. The only major purchase that we have that will be probably in the next couple of years is we're going to have to replace our air packs. The ones we have, we got on a grant in 2007, I believe. So I just finished a grant week before last to replace them. So we've been very, very lucky with grants, so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed.
Okay.
And what kind of costs are we talking there?
It was, if we get the grant?
Ballpark. Yeah, without the grant.
Oh, without the grant, it was 280 some thousand ballpark.
280,
yeah, about
300,000.
yeah.
That's
Yes.
for the air packs?
That is the backpack that they wear, the bottle that goes in it, a spare bottle, and a face piece. Where the changes are coming is when we bought these the last time, we bought packs, and each pack came with a face piece. Well, under all the new cancer initiative stuff, we're scrubbing the guys' gear down. They have 2 sets. We're doing everything we can to keep them healthy. They will each be fitted for their own face piece now. They can be put on a machine and fit tested to make sure it seals properly and they're not breathing in some kind of carcinogen that they shouldn't be. Because right now, if you jump in a truck, it's a mask. We all share it on each pack. So our goal is to get each guy into his own mask.
All right. Yeah, given what you guys are exposed to, probably be better to have your own and be fitted for them.
Yes. We had a scare this year with an individual, and I can't tell you that it's related to our work, but it's a possibility. In the end, everything came out great, but we're going to do everything we can to keep these guys healthy.
Chief, is that something we'll do on a lease purchase spread it out over several years?
If we cannot get a grant, we'll look at. But I'm hoping that we'll be able to secure grant funds. If we are able to get the grant that I just finished up, our cost would be a little over $6,000, and that's it. That's for all the packs and the face pieces. So.
How's your turnout gear, your hoses?
Turnout gear, we set up a replacement plan back in 2008. We replace 7 sets every year. Next year will be the last year of the replacement cycle, and then we'll get a break for a couple years, and then we'll start through the cycle again.
We replaced some this year. We replaced last year, this year, next year.
Correct.
And then there's a break.
The ones for this year, the guys have been measured. We're just waiting for it to arrive. So we're rotating. What happened was when I took over, we had to buy 42 sets of turnout gear all at once, and it was expensive. So now we're into a rotation where you're only buying so many sets a year.
Now, do you have your vehicles now on a rotational schedule?
I do.
And what about like the Ford fire truck or whatever it is, the pickup truck, things like that? Are those included?
Everything is on. I have a spreadsheet if you're interested. I'm really
Always like
anal
numbers.
about stuff like that. I'm sorry, but
I like numbers.
yes,
I'm good.
it is actually. If I were to get run over by a bus tomorrow, the next guy could pick up the sheet and say, oh, "Okay, this is what we're doing." And it should be that way. I should be able to, win the lottery or whatever. But yes, it's all set up on a spreadsheet. It's easy to follow. We have it all marched out. We have it marched out well, and probably into sometime in 2030.
Right. Yeah, if you could send that to me, that would be awesome.
I will do that. I was just actually working on updating that the other day. So yeah, I'll get it updated and get it
All
sent
right.
out to you.
Are the expenses that are coming up, especially like trucks and things like that, I mean, can we start budgeting now for those purchases that might not take place for 3, 4, 5 years? I mean, are we allowed to create a fund and start putting a small amount each year rather than looking at all of a sudden we got this 200,000 that's coming due to replace this piece of equipment, rather than trying to figure out then where we're getting the money? Can we start planning now and start putting money aside for that specific purchase?
And that 107 fund is part of that 2007 levy. If you remember when we did that, it was capital
Yes.
and operations. So that's all tied in with that levy that we'll eventually have to address.
Okay. So, yeah.
I think we can. I'd have to look into the semantics of that, but I think we could probably do something like along the line of our rainy day fund or something like that.
Yeah, and kind of specifically.
We'd have to
more-
do it in the fire department.
Yeah,
Because that is levy driven.
right.
I do have a question. On page 28, the health insurance, which was 158, 180, drops so far. We're not done with the year yet so far at 126, and we've budgeted less than what we spent this year. Is that due to some people not being eligible?
65.
That's
The
just the way
split
it's rebudgeted, okay.
Yeah.
Just not used
The
to see
numbers-
insurance change like that.
The numbers with changing from 65-35 to 60-40, the numbers really skewed. I mean, I expected you all to hang me up to dry because the numbers have changed so much. It's like, does he know what he's doing? But that's why it's happened.
Right. And like I said, the only way to compare them is to add all three together.
Right.
Is there any way, Ron, next year that we could maybe have a total of all three with this involved? So I just think, to me, it's a lot easier to look at.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's just, you gotta add everything up on all three. I'd like to see one of all three together. Something maybe for next year, I mean.
With changing the percentages.
Yeah, the
well,
only problem is that there are three separate funds. So,
I understand what you're doing, but it would be nice to have them all together.
I mean, I
look
could
at.
potentially create an Excel spreadsheet and say, here's the totals.
Yep.
From each fund. But the purpose, as you remember, the ordinance that was passed years ago, so much has to go to operations, so much to capital, so we have to stay within those parameters. So hence the accounting rules. And with levies, we have to have separate funds because the levies have to be,
Right, but if we're changing the percentages that we're allocating for each
It's just.
fund,
Yeah. It's just
mean-
tough for me to compare this year. That's the way I see it.
Scott, to answer your question, we can do a capital fund, set up a new capital fund, and start to put money into it.
to me, it just makes good sense
The
to
enterprise,
start.
the enterprise funds don't roll to the bottom line, only the general fund lines.
Okay.
So Yeah.
Yeah, look at some of his
Chief
big
and I'll have to-
expenses coming up, and
We'll have to sit and discuss those things that are coming and then try to put that, build a line for it.
Where would the money come from to put into that fund? If we're already spending more than what we are taking in through the fire and EMS levies, how would you have money to put into a separate fund to keep it for 5 years?
Maybe you'd like to put some of the Blue Line technology or Blue Line fees into that.
That's not gonna last 5 years.
Oh, I know,
So
but,
I would suggest that if you're gonna start
I mean, it's gonna be difficult because it's hard to meet expenses now.
that's what I'm saying.
And we can't take money out of the general fund and just pop in there. The way it's set, if we advance money into that, then basically we have to give it back within a year. And we've had to do that in the past. It's something we'll have to look at. We'll just have to look at it and see what all the parameters are.
That's what I was saying. I don't see how you can come up with a fund that'd be a nice thing to have if you could just draw so many $1,000s out of the general fund every year and put in there for police and fire. But if I understand it right, that money's got to come from Mike's budget from someplace, one of the funds.
Right.
And
Right.
and if we're already overspending those and we're
Or-
adding money to them,
If we, for example, let's say we budget $1 million,
we only spend 900,000.
let's say we budget $1 million, but we only spend 900,000, we might be able to capture that 100,000 and move that before the end of the year.
And we come in under what's budgeted every year.
All right, any other questions for Chief Schultz? Anything to add?
The only thing that I would like to add is, a month or so back, council approved the purchase of the new heart monitors and the mechanical CPR devices. I know you guys remember that. We took delivery of those, put them on the truck, and within the first 2 weeks, the mechanical CPR device brought somebody back. So, thank you. It was well worth the money that we spent. And I'm sure his family would agree, but the first time we used it, I knew that's what they were doing. I just wasn't there. And I told Chief Copen, I said, do you think anybody will remember the mechanical CPR devices on the truck? They did. They used it, and it did what it was supposed to do.
Awesome.
So thank you guys very much for approving that.
Well, thank you for your department's work there, Chief. We appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
Thanks, Chief.
Back to you, Mr. Messner. Do you want to go over anything else, or?
I'm finished for the evening.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions over things that we covered, or if you have a quick question of something that we're going to be covering next week?
Mr. President, I just have a quick comment. Along with what Mr. McGlone said, in the past, and I don't have a problem with the new way you're doing it, but within the past, we had, for each department, we had a little cover sheet telling us what the total budget was last year and this year and what percentage it went up and down. And for me, that was rather useful. So if there's any way we can incorporate that in the future again, I for one would appreciate it.
I can certainly do that. That was an Excel program that I raised. This year was totally analytics-based. I did not have to create the Excel worksheets, which took me a couple hundred hours just to put together for everything. And then the design and everything was already instrumented, but I can create that. That's not too hard to do.
That would be great.
Do you have a total number on the expense? Is that the back page?
Yeah, you
For
can,
the budget?
if you go to the, well, let me On the revenue side, it's page 14. Revenues projected at $21,200,874. On the expense side,
Now, based on that revenue, actual this year is 12 million. If I'm looking at this page correct. Year-to-date this year, 12 million.
you can't go by that on the revenue side because in 19, we've got some awful big loans coming through. ODOT and OPWC, for projects.
Okay.
We've got some serious loan money coming through. On the expense side, it's on page 67.
67.
21,082,208.
But then as much loan or grants that we have coming through and stuff like that, we're going to have as much going out in the expenses. All right.
Get to the last page. I'm sorry, Scott,
Oh, I was just saying that, as much extra revenue as we have coming in from these grants and loans and stuff, we're going to have it being spent. Do we?
They're pretty much, like New Park has one, ODOT for Cleveland Maslin Road, we have one for that. Those are two that are right off the top of my head.
I'm just looking at what I'm trying to get to is if we remove items that are outside of the normal budget, remove those expenses for the ODOT, New Park, things like that, things that we wouldn't normally encumber.
Then the numbers would be much lower.
Right, but I mean, where are we in comparison to, say, last year?
Well,
so if we're getting, say, $10 million from ODOT and for New Park and things like that.
So actually, I've budgeted for 18 to receive $15 million.
15 million?
15 million. We're up to 12. It could go, it'll approach the 15. Before that, it was 13 and 13, 13.8 and 13.6. So in 18, it was a little bit more, but due to the projects, the size of the projects and the loan monies that we're taking in for, 3, 4, 5 projects, that's what's making up the difference. For example,
right,
Cleveland Maslin in itself is 2.7.
Right, but if we took those out, is what I'm saying.
You'd be closer to the 15 probably.
Would we hit that 15 or would we be closer to that 13, 14?
No, we're at, through October 26th, we're at 12.1, so.
You expect to see another 2.5?
We're, income tax for sure, we're gonna get another, let's see if I can tell from this. Yeah, we're gonna get probably another $700,000 yet in income tax.
Okay.
So I would say I'm projecting we'll be closer than not to the 15.
All right, and where do you see the expenses for 2018 probably finishing off? We're at 10 now. I'm just rough. I know you.
Hard to say. Here in about 2 weeks, I will probably start putting out an email to all department heads to start shutting their purchasing down, emergencies only in the month of December in that, so that, for example, the service department has pretty much shot their wad in that. They're there.
I didn't know if we had any major, huge expenses coming up. Like year end, people clean up things and start paying for different things. And
no, I try to get them to do everything, in the first 11 months.
Okay.
When we get
October, November, even.
When we get, into October, November, I start slowing everybody down in that. So starting January, they'll be off like a herd of horses in that. I keep telling them if they'd spend as wisely a few months before the end of the year as they do a few months out of the year, they and I would be in much better position. But they do a good job. Overall, the department managers have done an excellent job. I have no real complaints. It's been a good team effort. They've worked hard. These are their budgets. I've tweaked a few of them, only things that I've seen, and once I've told them what I've tweaked and why, they've agreed with me. It's just a learning process. You see over a number of years, the longer you go, the more of a history you see.
Right. And
it gets to be more and more accurate. One thing I'm especially pleased with this year is that the salaries and benefits, that was a real moving number, because people coming in, resigning, hiring new people, and positioning them throughout the year, that was always kind of a crapshoot trying to get. But with this new analytics program, it's right down. I mean, I know per the hour, how much per hour. I know how many days in the pay period. I know what their expenses are, and I think this year I'm real pleased. I'm sitting back, somewhat holding my breath, because it's a new year. I want to see, but from what I've seen, it's this new software has been very good to work with.
Good.
And you don't think that new software can just take that last line of each column, each budget, like the console, the final line, and
Write a query and
one for
basically.
each one, and create one page, just to see the.
Well, remember what I did in years past is when I gave you the table of contents,
yeah.
I gave you the total for
I
each
like
one
that.
of those.
Yeah.
And I'll do that
I think
again.
that's what-
Okay,
I think
good.
that's what Paul was asking.
The only
as well.
reason that I haven't done it yet is because if
Right.
you all make changes, then,
Okay.
Right.
Plus the Exhibit A will show you each fund, what's salary and what's operational,
Oh, super.
with a
Okay.
total.
Okay.
In that, so you'll get that with Exhibit A as we get closer to the end. I
Okay.
just didn't want to do a bunch of work and then,
Okay, as long as we get that, that's
Yeah.
fine. I don't
Yeah.
care when.
and Mr. Towsley would like to have I'll try to work on that and see if I can get that produced.
Okay.
And where I was kind of going with that whole revenue expense thing, obviously, a number of different improvement projects going on within the city this year. And, my kudos to administration. Right now we're at 10,000,005. We budgeted 12,500. So as of right now, we're 2 million underneath that. And like I said, I think that we've done quite a bit within the city this year and have a number of projects ongoing, so it's nice. All right, anybody else have anything for Mr. Messner?
I'm going to let, as we go forward, these were the largest departments, as you're well aware. This is where you usually have most of the questions. I'm pretty much going to let council decide in the next 2-3 weeks what you want to question, where you want to go. I'm available if you want to come and see me. I've sat with 2 or 3 of you already. Happy to sit with anybody that wants to come in. Send me an email. Happy to answer those. We don't have to wait till, Monday nights to get all this done. I know it can get long and get tiresome, so.
And unless somebody has some specifics that they want to look at, I'll probably just break it off into blocks and we can discuss those at the next council meeting and kind of go from there.
So if I'm understanding you right, Mr. President, you'll send us an email and tell us what you
Yeah,
think.
I'll have Carrie send something out saying that we're, next council meeting, the agenda will cover page 1 through
That would be
whatever.
helpful. Thank you.
And then that way you at least know what you should be looking over and kind of looking at. I don't have anything else other than, Mr. Messner, are we funding a fund now for, I think police is probably the only place that has it. The ones that are gonna, they signed up for whatever program that was where they have so many years, but at the end of that term, then they're out no matter what.
Drop program.
Drop program, thank
The
you.
only thing is, though, they don't have to share that with us, so. that-
Exactly, they don't have to share it with us, so are we planning ahead for any individuals that may have been in that, so when they do retire, that they get all this comp time and everything else that's, can be a pretty large number?
We're budgeting for that. As you recall, part of the Blue Line goes in, to fund that account.
Okay.
In that, and I've budgeted in that fund, because we do have 3, maybe 4 retirements coming up in 2019, so I've budgeted for those in that. I believe it's Fund 200, the compensated
Absences?
absences, 11th pay.
Okay. All right, anybody else have questions? Mayor, you said you had some,
Yeah, I just have one public service announcement, and it's just, once again, this year, we're doing the Shop with a Cop program. And again, basically, there is a drawing for first prize, 50-inch TV, second prize, $100 cash, third prize, $50 cash. They've got about 3,000 tickets that they're looking to sell, so they'll probably go quick. But, and then the drawing for that will be on December 15th. And then depending on how many tickets sold, they are also accepting any donations, which, money donations, if anybody's interested in doing that as well. And like I said, they're hoping to take the kids from the Norton area. Once again, we did break off I think it was last year was the first year we did. We're doing our own program, so to speak, and they're taking the kids to Target. And we're kind of going, I know in the past we shared it with a bunch of other communities. We're doing it, last year was the first year that we went to the Wadsworth Target. That worked out well, so they're going to do that again this year. So once again, tickets are $1 a piece, and I do have tickets this evening if anybody's interested. That's all I have.
anyone else?
Mr. President, I would like to announce the pajama and book drive is going on now at the council office here. And we are collecting pajamas and books to donate to the pajama program that helps children that are being placed into foster care. And the organization that coordinates for our area is working with 23 different organizations. So the most needed are teenage size or adult size. And the collection will go through November.
And they can drop that off here.
Yes, at the council office.
And also in the past, I don't know if it's the same, will you take check and cash as well?
Yes, of course. Money is always appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Tesley.
Okay. And that's running through when?
The end of November, and then I'll coordinate that with the other council clerks.
Okay.
Just as an afterthought, we did have a medication take-back day, and it was the results of that were listed in the paper, and thank you very much for that. But one thing that wasn't noted, and it really isn't part of the take-back day, but it's kind of a side effect, we've been collecting syringes to go to the county syringe exchange program, which has become a very, very successful program, and there were around 1,000 syringes that were also donated by several families over the month of October, which really doesn't show up anywhere. It wasn't reported. And thank you. That's an ongoing program.
What do they do with those syringes?
The syringes are handed out in an exchange when someone who is addicted to drugs brings them in, and they dispose them properly, and they receive clean syringes and a disposal system. The whole idea is stopping the spread of disease. If you have one person you've prevented from hepatitis C. You've saved us, the county, the citizens, residents, $80,000 per. And so there's other diseases. That's not the only one. But the whole effort is stopping the spread of disease. Along with that, they're handed out by counselors. And these counselors are adept at getting to know and develop relationships with these people who are addicted. And we have had a number of them ask, can you help me get out? Can you help me get into a program? And that's the whole goal, is to turn these people around so they become not addicted and more productive. Okay, thank you.
What are the requirements for the syringes? Just sealed packages?
Sealed packages, and it's 1 cc, nothing larger. We do not want a large syringe going out there. Syringe and needles.
Anything else? Meeting adjourned.
Yeah, adjourned. The day at the zoo.
Mayor.
I'm not rushing, I just wasn't sure on how to.
It's getting colder in here as we went.
Yeah.